And of course, we start from the Acropolis because, as I told you, this is where really the oldest part, it marks the oldest part of the city, that fortress, that citadel, which is beautifully described by Peter Levy, a British poet, archaeologist, a Jesuit priest as well, a travel writer, a professor of poetry at the University of Oxford, a critic, a reviewer, very prolific, who, when he visited the Acropolis in the 60s, he encapsulated in these few words the entire history of this amazing hill. At present, the Acropolis is the most complicated archaeological site in Greece. It has been a Mycenaean fortress, an archaic complex of sanctuaries, gradually but never quite transformed into an integrated series of great monuments, an elaborate forest of Hellenistic and Roman art, a Christian place of pilgrimage, an episcopal see and a ducal palace, a walled town, a Turkish castle, a battlefield, and an archaeological carcass stripped to the bone. Yet, in its present state, the Acropolis can still take one's breath away. Its classical buildings seem to be the most wonderful of the works of man. We are going to see now the two classical temples that survive at the top of the Acropolis, the Parthenon and the Erechtheion. But let's first start from the gate, the monumental entranceway into the Acropolis, the so-called propylea. And here it is, when you stand at the top of these gates, you face that amazing, again, view to the west. And of course, down there you have the port of Piraeus, as well as the island of Salamis. Piraeus, as I said, has been the port of Athens for the last 25 centuries, when Athens made that conscious choice to build a fleet. And actually, there was a very serious reason. The Persians, the superpower of the ancient world, were attacking the whole of Greece, and Athens was targeted. And they built 200 battleships, with which indeed they confronted near Salamis, in the narrow straits between Salamis and Piraeus, the mighty fleet of the Persians and King Xerxes, and they sank their entire fleet. That was a glorious victory that happened back in 480 before Common Era, before Christ. And after that, Athens rises as a superstar in ancient politics. And that's how the Acropolis is created in that glorious period, the Golden Age of Athens, as we call it, the 5th century before Common Era. That victory will be remembered always. And of course, the Athenians built in this fantastic gate complex also a temple here on the left, the temple of Athena Nike, to remind everyone of that victory, because Nike in reality means victory in Greek, like the famous, of course, brand of athletic sportswear. Athena is our goddess. The city of Athens is named after Athena, and Athena is how we pronounce Athens in Greek, the goddess of wisdom, who actually competed for this city with the mighty god of the seas, Poseidon, and he lost to Athena because they both offered gifts, but the gift of Athena was more attractive. The olive tree, which the locals had never seen before, so they chose her gift, and she became the patron goddess of this city. And of course, her famous temple is the Parthenon. Athena was a Parthenos, a virgin. That's what the word means. So this is the house of the Virgin Athena. It was the largest marble temple built at that time. To the roof tiles, they used marble, that Pentelic marble, glorious. It stood there as a symbol of the power of Athens back in the 5th century before Common Era, when it was built. At the time that Athens expands everywhere and dominates in Greece. So it is a symbol of Athenian imperialism, but at the same time also of Athenian democracy, because this is when that precious political system flourishes. And we see it being in continuous use as an ancient pagan temple until the Christians, of course, come and take over. And they will convert, why not use the building? They will convert it into a Christian church for another virgin protectress of the city, the Virgin Mary. And of course, later on, we have the Turks as well conquering in the 1400s, And the Turks will use it as a mosque. You can see the minaret. Also in the previous photograph, you could see a minaret here. This is a sign of a mosque. And the Turks will also use it for storing their ammunition, especially at the time that the Venetians are attacking. There was a seaborne Venetian attack back in 1687, and that's when they also bombard, you see the lines of the orbits of the cannonballs, bombard the Acropolis heavily and the Parthenon, because they had intelligence that that's where all the gunpowder was. They didn't stop because it was the Parthenon. They hammered it, and a bomb fell indeed through the roof, hit the gunpowder and exploded, blew up essentially the Parthenon into thousands of pieces, including, of course, the people who had sought refuge in there. So that mortar shell fired by the Venetian troops was really the end of that building. It destroyed it to a great extent. And after that, the path to pillage was open for many travelers who came and picked up souvenirs, broken pieces of sculpture. Of course, in 1830, we have the independence. But just before the independence, this is how the Acropolis looked like. This was painted by a British painter, Edward Dodwell, who gives us this pre-independence images of Greece and Athens in the early 1800s. So you see the Parthenon, what is left of it, with a tiny new building, which is the new mosque they built. And all these houses, which you don't see anymore, of course, when you go at the top of the Acropolis, were the houses of the Ottoman garrison, because this was a military base. And of course, their families and themselves lived up there. So that's how it looked like. And of course, that's when Lord Elgin, infamous Lord Elgin, the British ambassador of Britain in Istanbul, will ask permission, supposedly by the Turkish Sultan, to come and make replicas of the sculpture decoration of the Parthenon, because he was building an expensive villa for his expensive wife in Scotland. Actually, according to the latest research in the Ottoman archives, there isn't such an order ever issued. It seems that he forged it. Edward Dodwell, that a British painter, was an eyewitness to that dilapidation. Elgin bribed the Turkish army garrison up there, and he stayed for a few years, taking the original sculptures as it is shown here. And of course, in the end, they were shipped over to Britain and sold to the British Museum. This is a temporary space where they were first housed, and they're of course still housed there where Elgin sold them. Another eyewitness to this pillaging was Lord Byron, who can be seen in many parts of Athens, in name streets, in the neighborhood in Athens, but also in this statue where Greece, the personification of Greece in rags, and embraces him, because Lord Byron, besides being the eyewitness to that pillaging, he also believed in the cause of independence for the Greek people, and he fought on our side during the War of Independence, that died in Greece fighting in 1824. And he wrote this fierce, before dying, of course, fierce poetry, that poem, The Curse of Minerva, about the pillaging of the Parthenon by Lord Elgin. It's as if the temple itself is talking, and he says, I saw successive tyrannies expire. And then he says, thy country, Britain, it means, sends a spoiler worse than both. Survey this vacant, violated fane, worse than the Turks and the Goths. And it says further down, what more I owe, let gratitude attest. No, Alaric and Elgin did the rest, that all may learn from whence the plunderer came. The insulted wall sustains his hated name. Across the Parthenon, there is another gorgeous temple, classical temple, the Erechtheion, which is named after a mythical king of Athens. The Erechtheion is mostly famous for that detail, that porch with the 6 young virgin Caryatids, as they are nicknamed, statues supporting that heavy roof over their heads of these wonderful young virgin priestesses, apparently, as it seems to Athena. And you can see it in the left photograph with all these models of Christian Dior, the haute couture fashion from Paris, doing a fashion shoot back in the 1950s there. They also did a new one just last summer, again at the Acropolis. And you can see the original Caryatids as they stand now in the new Acropolis Museum in the right photo. And as you enter, you actually don't face them, you face their backs, which I adore, because their backs, being subjected to less erosion, preserve this wonderfully braided hair, which is a sign of their young age, and the wonderful naturalistic pleating of their dresses that caress their bodies. They're wonderful. And of course, there is one Caryatid you can see the gap missing because Lord Elgin took her to Britain. She's at the British Museum.